Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It depends upon when you're listening. And welcome to The Solution. Nothing changes if we change nothing. We are the NYCPRC, which stands for New York City Prevention Resource Center, and we're housed at Children's Aid. And we haven't been here in a while, but I'm Ronni Katz, and my partner in crime is
ChevarF, Community Development Specialist with the New York City Prevention Resource Center, co-host of The Solution. Nothing changes if we change nothing. But this is what this is about: prevention, primary prevention, and also not only about that, but also the inner person, the inner you. Because when I've heard Ronnie, and we have our last episode, Mind, Body, and Soul. People are interested in because we talked about those things and how the different aspects of those. Uh, People connect with, if not all. Some people use all. Some people are more connected to one than the other. So I did have quite a few people come back and said thank you for the mind, body, and soul because they needed that. They needed to hear that people are considering, even when substance misuse or prevention of comes into play. How do those interact with your daily life? So I
exactly.
wanted to acknowledge that, let you know that people were saying that to me.
And I heard some comments. In fact, we were conducting a job interview, and
Oh yes, yes.
one of our candidates. And you never know, even if you touch one person, it's going to be a big deal.
Absolutely,
But yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, we're doing another host to host today because we've had a lot of stuff going on. I mean, this has been a crazy period in a lot of our lives. Those of you that know me or know me even professionally because I've been really open is a little over a month ago, I lost my wife.
Wow.
The year started on New Year's Eve day. She collapsed after years of chronic health problems, and then about 6 weeks of real back pain, excruciating back pain, lower lumbar pain that just wouldn't resolve, and she collapsed and had to be taken to the hospital by ambulance. And while there for 9 days, we discovered that she had cancer throughout her body. That was what was
Wow.
causing the lumbar pain, and it was emanating from lung cancer. And it had already gone to her brain and her spine as well. And she passed away on the 16th of February. So it's a little over a month. It's still surreal to me. I
Mm.
have accepted it. I'm working on healing as well. Um, but I'm so relieved she's not suffering because she suffered
Understood.
for a really long time. Not just this, but many years of chronic illness. And the last few years have been nothing but pain. So it was an interesting way to start the year. But I've learned so much through this period.
Mm.
And there was many years ago before I got into recovery, there was a time in my life. I mean, I know in my teenage and young adult years, I would have gotten not just young adult actually, but I would have gone out and I would have gotten really wasted. I would have just numbed the pain. But there's
Understood.
such a relief in feeling that pain and allowing
Mm.
yourself to work through it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I think what you're saying, what you said about experiencing the pain and we run from pain, right? Because it hurts, right? We do
Right.
things to mask the pain, right? Whether it's substances or abuse, whatever the case may be, we do certain things to mask it and not learn from it. And I think what you're saying, let me rephrase it. I know what you're saying. I believe what you're saying is important and true to learn from that pain, and like, and if you don't mind, I've shared on this podcast. My grandmother passed away 3 years ago. Time goes by crazy, and I learned from that. I learned from that, I learned about
Hmm.
myself and what I needed for myself because of the pain,
Right.
and now I have an uncle, and I'm not gonna say things he's gonna like, why are you saying my name? But he won't, 'cause he loves me to death. He has stage 4 cancer. He
Hmm.
has cancer throughout his body. He's been fighting for the past 2 years.
Yeah.
He has prostate cancer, breast cancer, name it, he has it. Throat cancer, he has it all. And
Mhm.
he's still, I mean, he's still here, you know, and that, and so to hear you, and that's something like, you know, well, um, you know, my grandmother's my mom's mom, so she lost her mom, so know how she dealt with it, and then watching her, you know, a few months ago, her partner passed away in last September, and now her brother, who are they're really close, so I'm just trying to keep an eye on her, into, you know, and to any listener, if you hear this, I'm asking for support and how. When, you know, I want her to live. I want her to embrace, you know, what's going on. But I mean, it's easier said than done.
Hmm.
I get it. It's easier said than done. You know, it's not my brother. It's not. It wasn't my mother, right? You know, it's my uncle, my grandmother, who, you know, who I love very dearly. And like, you know, my world probably stopped also for them, for him also. Stopped for her, and it'll stop for him. You know, but my concern now, because my mother's up, she's in her 70s, she's up in age, and she just found out that she may have a pinched nerve because she does everything. She's always moving around helping everyone, and I'm always like, Mom, you need to relax. You need to
Right.
sit back and relax. Like, you know, I'll do it for. I'm like, Mom, just call me Saturday in the morning. I will go grocery shopping for you. You do not need to go outside. Go outside to enjoy life for yourself, not for other things. Like, you know, because she loves to cook. So cooking is your thing. Go cook. I will go buy the groceries. You cook. You know,
And you'll eat too.
yeah, and I'll eat too. Absolutely. So, you know, for anyone who's listening and you're going through whatever you're going through, and Ronnie, thank you for saying what you said. I think is extremely important. Learning from the pain. Learning from the pain is so important. I know it's
It really
hard.
is.
I know it's hard. People are listening like, but why? Why would you want to push yourself through that? Then I could ask, why would you want to push yourself to the other side? You know, why would you want to push yourself through your substance use? Why would you want to push yourself through abuse? Why would you want to put yourself through depression is not easy. Why would you want to, you know, none of these things are easy. None of them. Even learning from the pain isn't easy, but you learn about yourself.
But you know what? It's harder not to learn. It's
Yeah, yeah.
harder to keep it inside.
Hmm.
I spent a lot of years doing that. And, you know, most of our listeners know that I'm in long-term recovery. And, you know, and from the time I was a teenager, even before I started using drugs and alcohol, I had already mastered ways to mask my pain.
Mm,
You know,
mm,
because my house was just so stressful. And
mm,
look, you know, a lot of us grew up in houses where our parents didn't get along and there was a lot going on and we just didn't feel like we fit in. And, you know, those of us who write and we're artists and
mhm,
musicians, you know,
mhm,
sometimes think that we even have a harder time because we feel so much. The more
mm,
we feel, the more it hurts. And so we don't feel anymore. We just protect ourselves.
mm,
But it's been such a relief to feel my feelings because otherwise I'd be holding them inside. And it's okay, you know. I used to have two emotions, and one would be euphoria or rage, and now I get to
mm,
have a whole gamut in between. And
mm,
that's been really good for me to be able to do that. I've been taking time for me. You know, it's interesting you say about your mom. She and I are in the same age group, and
mhm,
I feel like I'm on a new path now. I've
mm,
had a great loss. Yes, I have. It was not all rainbows and, you know, and fairies or whatever, you know, and lollipops. It was difficult. We had a difficult life together for a while. You know, when you're dealing with chronic illness, it changes a person inside and outside.
mm,
And as a caregiver, it drains everything out of you. And my friends, it's funny. My friends like to call me now in the evening. They said we couldn't call you for so many years in the evening because you were always so busy and so caught
mm,
up. And now they call me just to call me to say
mm,
hi. I'm calling you because I can. And there's kind of a euphoria for me in that. But you know, one of the reasons that happened, not just because Margie was sick, but many years ago when we met, I didn't know anything about relationships, and my friends
mhm,
would be calling all the time. And one day she said to me, "You know, we have just 2 or 3 hours together. We both, you know, and she worked then, work all day. We have dinner, and then we sit down for a couple of hours. If that's how you want to spend it on the phone with other people, that's fine. Or we could spend it together."
mm,
And I realized that, yeah, I need to put something into this relationship that's going to work.
mm.
And almost 25 years later, I guess it did work. You know, and that was something really important for me to learn that it's okay to tell people I can't be there for you right now. Um, or to say these are the times I can talk. But it got so rigid that it became limiting for me as a person.
Right.
Yeah.
No. And again, thank you for sharing that, and you reminded me of, I mean, in addition to these tragedies that happened to, well, my grandmother passing from one of my mom's mom, her partner, my uncle going what he's going through, and I've also shared in this podcast my younger brother having a stroke. So she's taking on so much, and I'm like, "Mom, just
Hmm.
let me do it. I'll do it." Like I speak to my brother almost every day, like I'll go to whatever he needs, or you need to focus on you. Like and then as a parent, anyone who's a parent who's listening, you do understand that you want your child and your children to have the best life, and sometimes you push your life to the side to make sure that they're taken care of. But however, how my mom raised me and my brother is to take care of each other. So I try reminding her that, we got this. I tell her, let us go. I tell her all the time, let us go. We got this. Let us go. You'll be all right. We'll be all right. Let us go. We'll figure it out. The two of us will figure it out. That's something for those listeners. I have two children myself, son and a daughter, Kayla and Kaden. Oh, so I think it's the first time I ever said their names on this podcast. But there you go, Kayla and Kaden. I tell them the same. Like you have each other, you protect each other, right? If you have time for me, which I hope you do, they always have time for me. But I always tell them to make time for each other. Make time for yourself. My daughter travels frequently. My son does his own thing. They love each other so much. He has his passport, and the idea for them is he wants to see the seven wonders of the world. So every year they're gonna go visit a different seven wonder together.
I
No
love
matter no
that.
matter what the circumstance, whether they're married, have children, that is their time for each other, brother and sister. And I hope that in the future their partners understand that this is what they have, and it's not
Hmm.
taken away from to your point, Ronnie. That relationship, but this is the moment for them. I hope that
Hmm.
people understand that. This is their moment. Like, and not many people have that a relationship with their siblings.
No, they don't. They definitely
I've
don't.
witnessed it. Trust me, I've witnessed it. I've witnessed it. I've experienced it. And Ronnie, you shared too.
Yeah, we won't go there.
I know, I
But
know.
I mean, it doesn't mean that we don't love our siblings. It just means
Absolutely,
that we don't
absolutely.
have that same type of connection and allegiance to each other. Um,
We love with
yeah.
space. We love with space.
No, it's funny because I've been watching a lot of one thing you do when somebody passes and you're starting a new life. I mean, this is sounds so trivial, but there are a lot of shows that I wanted to watch that she didn't. Like we watched one season of Stranger Things, and then she was like, "No, I don't want to watch that." So I caught up on Stranger Things and Cobra
Nice.
Kai, and just all these shows that
Nice.
and I recently thought, "Well, I need a show that I've watched before, but I don't mind watching again because I've already gone through a lot of those."
Right,
And
right,
I was like, I haven't watched This Is Us since the one time I watched it.
right.
And you reminded me of that, the big three and how they were always there for each
Mhm,
other. And
mhm,
watching the
mhm,
show again, it reminded me of how they had a lot of differences, but they found a
mhm,
way to always come together and support each other. And that there's a beauty in that. And that show dealt with a lot of addiction and, you
Yes,
know,
yes.
in a lot of different ways and dysfunction. But it showed how they always came together to be there for each other no matter what. And that's something in life we all need that. Um,
Absolutely.
and we see, I think as we talk about this, I think of young people growing up today and
Hmm.
how hard it is for people to ask for help. I
Hmm.
mean, it wasn't easy for me either. Most people think they got to do it on their own, but I worry about young people today who are going to try to do it all on their own. And, they're online, they're being exposed in so many ways, and they're getting hurt in so many ways. And the ability to ask for help really it inhibits you, it holds you back, and that's often why people will turn to substances.
Hmm.
I think part of the whole prevention spectrum is getting people to be able to form relationships,
Hmm.
trusting, loving relationships, because we know that's a protective factor. Um,
Hmm.
having adults in your life who believe in you and you believe in them, having positive friends.
Hmm.
We always look at the peer pressure, but peer pressure can be done on a positive level.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
Hmm.
those are things that sometimes we don't do. We don't ask for help. I, because of my recovery, I reached out to all my friends. I kept saying, I need
Hmm.
you to check in on me. I need you to check in on me. I have four friends who every day check in on me and we talk.
Mm.
And they got me through all this, and they're getting me through all this. So it's just the isolation piece is what I find really worrisome for this
Mhm.
generation coming up, and a lot of people, even in your mom's age group, which is mine, you can get so isolated.
Yeah, and I noticed that from my mom, her isolation. Although she does still go out, she still parties, she does those things, but I notice when she's home, how but again, I have to part of being a son, part of being who I am, I had to learn to allow her to be, right? And I can't force her until I'll remind her, "Hey, mom," and or just sit back and I'll be quiet and I'll listen, because when she's ready, she's ready. Because that's something she'd always tell me, when the time comes, the time will come. When it's ready for you, it'll happen. So I have to remind myself of the things that she's taught me to practice with her. Like when it's your time, for you to get to reach that goal or whatever the case may be to make yourself a better person, it'll happen, and it might and it so I have to understand that it might not be the time that she's ready for because like I said, she dealt with the death of her mom, my grandmother. She dealt with the death of her partner who suddenly passed away. When he went away, he came back and he was in the hospital. Literally, that's how it happened. No one knew what happened. Like the doctors couldn't tell what happened. He literally came back home and was in the hospital and died a week later. That's literally how it happened. One of the weirdest
Wow.
things. And I'm not making fun of it. I'm like, that's literally how it happened. My younger brother having a stroke, her dealing with that. So I'm like, and then my uncle dealing with his illnesses, amongst
Hmm.
other things, and I know for a fact, I know my mother, she wouldn't tell me everything that's going on with her, other than the pensioner that she might have. But
Right.
But just hearing that, and that's one of the reasons why with my kids, I do my best to let them know that this is open dialogue, that they can come to me. They always don't. I know that for a fact. We don't always come to those people. I know that. So, but however, I do tell my kids, I'm your dad. I may disagree, but allow me to disagree and allow me to think about it. I remind them, I always circle back. If I was wrong, I was wrong. And or if even if I don't disagree, I understand. I look back, I sat back and I reflected on it. Allow me to have the opportunity to 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 um to go through my emotions, to go through you shouldn't have did that. But most of the times, if you ask my kids, 9 times out of 10, I like, you want to do that? Let's go for it. How we gonna get there? What do you need to get there? You want to do the run track? All right, let's go get you to your track gear. What, Dad? Huh? My son said. Well, he's like 6'1", little muscular kid, long hair.
Hmm.
He wanted to be a model. I'm like, all right, as long as you finish school, you can do whatever you want. We'll find you a modeling agency. He's like, what? You serious? Bro, long as we have a balance, we have an understanding, you know, what you're asking for isn't harming you, right? It's about your future. It's not about my future. Growing up, it was like get a college degree and do this.
Hmm.
Why can't you get a college degree and do other things? Or
Right.
you know, why can't you? And then some people, college isn't for everyone. But if you're not going to go to college, what are you going to? What's the other outlet? And I never tell my kids now. It's like if this is a decision you want, we have to come up with a plan. And plans help with preventing substance misuse or preventing substance uses in all. But and I know I talk with ease and privilege of creating plans and what have you. I know people have to work towards that. It's a part of adding these things to your practice, right? Taking a step back, and
Right.
sometimes like Ronnie, you've known me for what 7 years right now, and you probably could say I'm a genuine person, I'm loving, and
Hmm.
there's some things I may say that may come across cold, and I'll be very frank, where it's like, say for instance, there's a traumatic situation, and I'm talking about pain, what have you, and then they invite everyone over, then my thing is okay, now what, right? What are we gonna? What's the plan? Like, and it sounds so cold because like we go there, we go to a space and we sit there, we reminisce, and then for me it's like next, what's next? And I say that because I've experienced these things where and these things could because I've watched family members that led to further substance misuse. And I've shared with you where I asked, hey, I have a family member who needs support. I've shared this with you in the past, and it's all connected to the passing of my grandmother. And I watched people. We've come together for a day or two, and then after that, it's.
Yeah. Well,
I know it's like what did he pull? That's what it is. It's like we don't speak anymore. So it's like for me, it's like all right, I come, and then what's the plan for us as a family? What's the plan for us as friends? What's the plan for us as coworkers?
not
I mean,
everybody's going to be on board though, and
I know, I know,
that's something that's hard to grasp too,
I
because
know,
it's
I
like
know.
it seems so logical. How come? But again, you find I've gotten so much support, but I know exactly who my inner circle is.
Right.
But we were talking about this too. I'm thinking of resilience. And
Hmm.
one of the things we know builds resilience in young people is having at least one positive adult in your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And whether that's a teacher, whether that's you know, a person from the PRC, a parent, a friend. I mean, but there's at least one positive adult. And I put it out there. Who's the positive adult in your child's life, to our listeners, or can you be that positive adult? It's really
Hmm.
important to have that, and that's very, very important in preventing substance misuse. Again, it's a protective factor, and we look at the problems a lot of times, but we forget to look at what we can build up in a positive light. And even as an adult, I've seen how that has helped me. We may be a lot of years older and have a lot of differences, but sometimes we do experience the same feelings. Often we do and have the
Absolutely.
same needs. We all need people in our lives who are going to be there for us. And that's, something, again, that when we're so focused on the problems in our society, we forget to look at some of the solutions and some of the light. Um, and I encourage people to do that.
Can, I
It's
want to
hard.
can I add something to what you're saying? I think for
You can add
me,
many things.
is patience. Patience on both ends. And because some of the things we're conditioned in, you want to go help a young person, and the young person says, I got it myself. And then you say, well, you don't got it. Part of it is patience and learning from each other, and
Yeah.
and that's the most important part, is these are conditions that we've grown up with, depending on whatever age you're in, and even societal changes, societal norm changes rather. Well, both societal changes, societal norm changes, and how people interact with each other, and the part that I miss the most, and this probably helped out in the past, especially for those of us who grew up in certain decades where we were latchkey kids. We had, didn't have the after school program, so we had to walk home through all the crack and the dust and and angel dust and all this other stuff. Where is that sense of community, that village mentality?
Mhm.
Part of me, I feel that we were missing that, for me. And that's one of the reasons why, for me as an individual, I do my best to engage as many people as I can, but in a positive manner, right? I was in the office the other day and I was on Zoom and there was someone sitting behind me. I could see the reflection, this big head of hair, huge head of hair, huge head of hair. I could see the reflection, right? But I'm like, it wasn't that it was bothering me. I was like, wow, this is interesting. But I'm like, in the Zoom call, what have you, the Zoom finally ended, but the person was still sitting there. So I looked back, oh, they're still sitting there. So I got up behind my desk and I got up from my desk rather, and I walked up to them. They had the headphones on. I tapped, said, hey, sorry to bother, but your hair is amazing. Like I love your hair, like the afro, and she was like caught off guard, and she's like, thank you. And I'm walking away. She said, well, that's the nicest thing someone said to me in a long time. Like just to say that and just to break down those barriers. And eventually this person may come to me and say, hello, hey, can I talk to you? Hey, I need your support. Not saying that this person needs support, but I'm just saying like this is how these things happen, is like tearing down these walls, rebuilding the village that we once had, just by saying hi. Just by complimenting someone's hair. It's like telling a young person, like, yo, when I was younger, like, I love your sneakers. When I walk around, because I'm a sneaker person, people stop me in the street, yo, where did you get your sneakers from? But even young people, older people of all ages will stop me in the street, and it turns into dialogue where it's like you build a bond with someone you don't know. You may never see again, but they know, right, there's someone who's older or younger who has the same connection. And I want to add one more thing to what Ronnie is saying about being that adult in the young people's life. And Ronnie and I both shared this in the past. We both ran after school programs, right? In different capacities, right? Or different timelines, rather. And and we always talk about there's no instant gratitude in that work, right? And so Okay, that's my Google Home. So, a few weeks ago, I'm walking through Harlem, walking and I bump in and I hear, is that Mr. Chevar? I'm like, who the heck? Who's calling me Mr. Chevar? Only people, the young students I used to have back in the days. And I bumped into a young lady, her and her two children. Remember, I was saying you always bump they have children or beards or what have you, and she's telling her kids, "This is Mr. Chevar from the after school program that I was in. He helped me." And she goes to me, I'm becoming a doctor now. And
Oh
she said,
God.
thank you for being positive. Thank you for always being there for me. And she's telling her kids, like, like this is the guy. This is the guy. Like, I mean, maybe she mentioned them to them, or she probably didn't mention them, but I know she like having this. She had this big smile, like this from. So you remember? I said, yes, I remember you. And we went back naming her friends, and she named my coworkers. I said, yes, I remember you. And then just hearing her telling me about her, briefly. And then but her kids were into my sneakers more than anything.
That's okay though.
Her daughter was like, "Hey, where did you get the sneakers from, Dad? Mom, can you get me these sneakers?"
But whatever connects you.
But just to close the story, I was just like Ronnie saying that being that positive influence, especially and I'm sorry to make this about me or about the society. Like a lot of times we don't have a lot of black male positive role models in those fields. And I had a conversation with one of our VPs about that. About, hey, there's not a lot of people who look like me. And I wasn't saying it in a bad way. I just wanted people to acknowledge that because we have people who look like me who work here, but they aren't in spaces where is the goal for me to progress. For anyone, because we were talking about mentoring and what have you. I'm like, for anyone to progress, who would they look to? And I say that because running after school program, I had parents come to me tell me thank you for being here because my son or daughter doesn't have a dad at home.
Mhm.
Right. I'm like, well, I'm not their dad, but I mean, but they would come home and talk about me, you know. I would have students tell me thank you. I would have coworkers and teachers, just because of like people had to truly believe that I am the same person. The cover of the book matches the pages in the book. This
Mhm.
is me.
This is true.
This is me. I mean, we all have dark pages. Don't worry, I got a few in there.
We all do, but not everybody's like that. I think we have so little trust in our society now, and especially with the way
Hmm.
things are. People, and with good reason. A lot of
Hmm.
people
Hmm.
are afraid
Hmm.
to reveal who they are, that they may have to suffer consequences. You don't know who to trust anymore. Although sometimes you do if you take the time to look at the relationship.
Absolutely.
But I can understand why people are afraid. But and you really what you said about community, and that's what's it is missing. I
Hmm.
mean, I live on Long Island. I live on a dead end. I rent a small house, and I pretty much know all my neighbors. I know them by name.
Mm.
Um, Even the ones I don't talk to, I know their names.
Hmm.
You know, and I've noticed when we first moved here, everybody was out in the street talking to each other,
Hmm. Hmm.
and now an ambulance arrived at my house on New Year's Day, and only one person called to ask about it, and that was my
Wow.
landlord. And he's been in touch with me, but nobody else has asked me. And I thought that was interesting.
Mm.
You know, the other tenant on the block who also rents a house. Actually, she pulled up. I didn't know my landlord actually was taken to the hospital like a week and a half
Oh
ago,
wow.
but she reached out to me because we've connected over the years. But it was weird that nobody else who I've seen, and they'd get in their car and they drive away, and it's like no. I go to make eye contact just to say hello, and they're gone. Um,
Wow.
so, and it's still more than a lot of other places. I still, I know who they are. I still talk to some of them. I would go knock on a door if I needed something. But it's what's happened to us?
Mm.
What, how have we gotten to this place? How do we build those villages? I mean, we always use that term, uh,
Hmm.
you know,
Hmm.
because it was coined, by a politician,
Hmm.
who some people love, some people don't, whatever. But still, it's true. Community, that's what this is all about. I grew up, you knew who everybody was in your block. Sometimes I ate two dinners because I went down to Jeannie Wilson's house, and her mother would cook something, and they ate later, so I got to eat another dinner. And I knew everybody's name, and everybody took me in. Do we have that today?
Well, it's a great question, Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know my mom, at least she tries to, that she feeds the people in her building and she cooks a lot of food, a lot of food. And she'll knock on the neighbor's door. She always tells me about a neighbor who's below her who had a stroke and she gives them food, what have you. That's her love language is to give. The gift of giving, the gift of yeah, the gift of giving. Like that's her love language. She wants to give, and that helps her create community. She tells me all the time when she's walking home, someone who she's done something nice for, and it could be like a random thing, like gave a quarter to. People grab her bags to hold them to walk her home. Like they protect her in the neighborhood, Well, also because they know me and my brother, but that's part of it. But in addition to the work that she's done in the past, her as a caregiver, as a giver to the world, like her love for people, her love for caring, and his she always calls me like Shay. She calls me Shay. Like this person, like they helped me. They bought this for me, and I didn't ask this from them. I'm like, because it's the good deeds you do. It's like because she's so used to giving that when someone gives to her, it's
Mm.
kind of foreign. So it's like, okay, but I'm like, no, accept it, or don't accept it. But she accepts
That
everything.
is hard, and
She
I have
accepts
to
everything.
say, for many years it was difficult for me. And I think I've told this story before. When I first got into recovery, I had so much trouble reaching out to people, and that's really the only way your recovery works is if you reach out and you let that community welcome you in. I mean, it's like we watch this going on worldwide with a little monkey in Japan who had to find his community, and,
Punch,
and
punch.
now that he has, he's so well adjusted. And when I first got into recovery, my sponsor gave me an assignment, and you're supposed to kind of follow those assignments. And she said, when you're in the grocery store, go up to somebody and ask where something is, like the breadcrumbs. And when they tell you aisle five, ask them to show you. But they're going to say it's down aisle five. It doesn't matter. You're going to ask them. You keep asking until they take you there. And I was so embarrassed. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe they're going to think I'm an idiot. Here I was in Nashville, Tennessee. I didn't know anybody. And I'd go up to the person, say, I don't, not necessarily the breadcrumbs, but it's my example. Excuse me, where are the breadcrumbs? Aisle five. Okay, could you please show me? It's right over there. Would you please show me though? Yeah, it's over there. And they would keep telling me where. And finally I'd say, I really need your help. Please show me. And they'd say, okay. And they would take me down to the breadcrumbs. To this day, over 28 years later, I still do that. And if I don't, I think, ooh, Robin is probably, she'd be disappointed in me. And she's right. I have to tell her I did this. And I do it all the time. And of course, now that I'm a senior citizen with arthritis and walking is a little bit harder for me, or a lot harder, I'll say to somebody, you know what? I really need your help. And they'll help me. And so we have to learn to ask sometimes because it's not just going to fall in our lap. And for once, I was talking when our guest showed up.
Nice. Okay. Gonna allow our guests to come in.
Okay. And
Good
our guest is
morning. Good.
here. We're waiting for
Good.
her to connect. And we see this great picture. That's a cool picture. I'll have to ask
Yeah, I
where
was
that
gonna ask,
is.
where is that? Where?
Yeah, I definitely want to know where that is. Hey, Daniela.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
We hear
Yes,
you
we
very
can.
well.
Okay, great, great.
Yeah, so where is that? Before you introduce yourself to our viewers and our listeners, where is that picture we just saw?
It's actually in Argentina. It's in Buenos Aires.
Great picture.
Thank
Nice,
you. Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, I spent some time there over the summer, just traveling around, and so that's where it's from.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, actually, that kind of fits in with what we're talking about. Why don't you introduce yourself to everybody so they know who you are? So we have a new member of our team, people.
Yes, of course. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm the new community development specialist here for New York City Partners of Prevention.
Yeah, and we're very excited to have Daniela here. She literally started less than a week ago. But we wanted people to meet her today and join in our conversation in the last 10 or 15 minutes. We're talking about community and how we've seen a lot of people lose that sense of community, how they would often gather around people, and especially young people, and it's such an important part of prevention to build those positive,
Yeah.
protective factors. And what I mean, in your experience, from from what you're noticing, do you still feel that sense of community in your life? And do you see it in others' lives?
Yeah, I would definitely say, especially in the younger generation, there's a bit of lack of community. Not particularly because people aren't looking for it, but I also feel like um, there's not enough like third spaces or structures where people can gather. Even if it's just like to sit down and to share ideas, right? Everywhere, kind of where you go now out in public, like if you go to the movies or you get coffee, you always have to pay, right? Like you always have to go out, and most of the time you're spending money. So I think creating more third spaces where there's environments where you can just go down at a park and sit and join people would be really beneficial in creating the environments where like community can flourish.
Can you share what third spaces are for our listeners who don't know that terminology?
Yeah, definitely. I would say like a third space is anywhere um where I guess people find common interest in grounds, and you can go, I guess, share your thoughts or ideas. So, for example, if there's like a poetry night at a place, that would be a place where there's common interest and people go together. I would also say libraries are third spaces, right? Like you can go there and there's community events, community activities happening that don't necessarily center around like a particular experience that costs money, like the movies or something like that.
So let me get this clear. Any space out of work or home, those are the first and second space. And the third space is a social setting that you can gather,
Mhm.
hopefully without spending your entire check. Is
Right.
that is that too correct to say? Because if you live in New York and you go to any experience, the experiences are very expensive to
Mhm.
participate in. Restaurants are very expensive to eat at. So the landscape of social settings is a little bit different. But so if you can, because Ronnie and I we were talking about what does it look like? So as far as like community and talked about a variety of things, but we're leaning towards the community part right now. Uh, can you talk about why do you outside of the third spaces, what can people do to recreate or bring back the community setting? What do you think?
I would say lean into your interest. That would be like the first thing I would suggest because I feel like when you have a passion and an interest in something and you're inclined to do it and you bring people together that have the same shared interests as you will go a long way. So even if it's just like book clubs or sitting down and sharing like knitting clubs, pottery clubs, things where you can start creating that community in your daily life, I would say.
Like sneaker events, I said like sneaker events like four times already.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Or
not
Sneak.
even
that we
like
know about you being into that.
even like the MoMA has like
Oh,
art nights
yes,
Friday.
front,
It's like free
yes.
Friday art nights where you can go and
I
learn how
go
to
there.
draw and it's like a free event and things like that.
In
Hmm.
Brooklyn, I'm out here. I'm Team Daniela. Brooklyn has first Saturdays. Brooklyn Museum, first Saturday of every month is free after 5 o'clock, and it's like a D. There's
Yeah.
two DJs, one on the second floor, and one on the first floor. So yeah, I'm sorry, Ronnie. Go ahead, Ronnie. Go for it. I
No,
heard you.
just as we're talking about, I'm realizing that that's something we need to do then with
Yes,
POP and the PRC and our social media. We really need to publicize all the
third spaces. Yep.
opportunities out there.
Hmm.
Um,
Mhm.
and the other side of community too we're looking at is the people on your block, the people in your building, the people in
Mm.
your
Yeah.
neighborhood. It feels like a lot of young people are missing that today. I was sharing when I grew up, which was a long, long time ago, and I knew every neighbor on the block. I would go to people's house and I'd have a second dinner because, my friend's mother invited me after I
Yeah.
ate, and they ate later. Or if I was doing something, like I remember when I first learned to drive, and I drove from Queens to the Bronx to see my friend Diane in Pelham, and we were on the roof of her building, and her mother got a phone call. Ronnie and Diane are on the roof of your building. Did you know that? And I mean, we're like, how did they see that? But that doesn't happen so much. People are not looking out for each other in the same way, and we're like, how do we get that back? How do we create that? Because young people need a safety net, and they need to know that there are positive adults in their lives, and that definitely, again, we looked at that as a protective factor, an asset, according to the 40 Developmental Assets Search Institute. And how do we build that so young people have a better chance of success in their lives on every level?
That is a great question, and to Ronnie's point, that could be a conversation that Pop can initiate with Discord, or, or any type of social media account to have that conversation about how do we reengage in the community. You know, when I was younger, very young, so it kind of ended right around when I was younger, to going to the neighbor and asking for a cup of sugar. Going to the neighbor, asking for a cup of rice. I'm not sure if people even do that anymore. Because no one's knocked on my door, asked for a cup of sugar or a cup of rice. And I would
Yeah.
gladly give it to you.
Yeah,
It's-
and I think also like I think young people like they crave community. I see it especially on social media, like TikTok. I've seen like groups of women get together and do like running clubs where you're meeting people like in like your vicinity, like whether that's a certain borough like Westchester County. Women are coming together to do running clubs, to do book clubs, just to meet people. And then also I know like it's also a lot more appealing when you go on social media and you already have like a you're like establishing a foundation for a network of people instead of going out and doing it on your own individually. So it's like already like we've set up like a meeting and it's like certain amount of people are coming instead of, if people are a little bit more shy, instead of going out and doing something alone, right? You're already creating like that group to go with.
Yeah, that's something my daughter does. She joined this running club. She went to a DJing class this weekend. She does a lot of those things. So, and again, that's her third space, and that's and everything we're sharing for those who are listening correlates and connects to prevention, right? Because it's an alternative too. And like I had a meeting the other day, and people, I'm like, and this is something I always say, because people, when I talk about the work that we do or work that I do, when in settings, they like, oh my God, here's the drug guy. Don't say no to drugs. Like, well, you're an adult. You can do whatever you want. That's usually my response. And I usually lean into the alternatives too. And I ask them, what do you do in your regular life? And how are you connecting with young people? Some of them are therapists, some of them are counselors, some of us are business owners, some of them are coaches, some of us are dance instructors, some of us are yoga instructors, and they all work with young people. I say, guess what? You are team drug guy. You are practicing prevention. You are giving young people alternatives too. So, and that's I always lean and I actually when they run from me, I'm like, what do you do? Tell me what you do, and I can tell you're doing the same exact thing that I'm doing. The only thing is, it's in my title, and it's part of the work that I have to do. But guess what? You are doing the same thing I am doing. I learned that from Ronnie. I say this all the time. I learned that from Ronnie. When I came in for the interview, for those who are listening, you might have heard this story 1,000 times, maybe four. How I came in an interview and I was like, I have zero prevention work, but I ran out of school for all these years. I have an understanding what a coalition is because of SOTs and PTAs, all this other work. So I have an understanding, but I didn't. But Ronnie was like, well, the after school program. Were the young people using drugs when they were in after school? I hope not. Were they drinking? Were they doing these things? I hope not. So she explained to me that I was already practicing and participating in prevention. So I use that when I have conversations with people. I use that. You are what you call me. What you're running from. You're running from yourself. You are already practicing that. I think part of it is to I thank you for sharing that, Daniela, that young people want to be a part of the community, have the conversation. Like I stated earlier, I'm going to say sneakers again. People stop me in the street, young people and older people. Where did you get those sneakers from? Or like to your point about going to these third spaces and finding your people. I do a lot. I collect Funko Pops. I collect lapel pins, the enamel lapel pins. There's an
Hmm.
enamel lapel pin expo. It happens every year, and there's like hundreds of people who go in there, and you find people who they look totally different, but yeah, like you're stealing each other pins, and you try to trade pins and make deals for pins. So there are different ways, and I think one of the interesting that I say this to our coalitions, even especially the new people. I think I said this to you also. Then you gotta find your people. You have to find your people. You
Yeah.
have to find your people. And it has to make sense to you. And Ronnie, you want to say something? I know you want to.
Because I'm listening to our ideas and they're great, but unless, and I go back to young people again who feel so isolated and are not comfortable looking for this. And I guess I'm asking our viewers and our listeners, I'm challenging them. How can you build community within your interpersonal life, within your family, within your neighborhood? Let's drill it down to the simplest levels because until people feel supported and positive, they're not going to look for those opportunities. They might actually look for opportunities that aren't so positive if their self-esteem has really been beaten down. So how can we, within our own lives, let's really make it small? Or maybe that is big when you think of a community. How do we build community as, friends, as parents, as aunts, as uncles, as neighbors? How do we do that so that our neighborhood or our building or just even wherever we live, people feel welcomed and they don't feel like they're alienated and they care about each other? And that may be a whole different podcast, but I ask people to think about that. Uh,
And keep in mind that's connected to prevention also. Just keep in mind, creating community is a part of prevention. That is a protective factor. Trust me. To Ronnie's point, which if you guys didn't know, realize she said earlier that the neighbors saw her on the roof with a friend and told mom, right? That is a protective factor. The people they
Mhm.
know, everyone knows, we all know. So that
Never went
is
up there again.
exactly. So if you guys didn't hear what she said, she told you right there that is a protective factor. The community was looking out for her and protecting her mom and saying, "Hey, we got your back." How do we get back to that? That we have each other's back. Is that safe to say, Ronnie?
Absolutely. That we see each other, that we're not looking down at our phones or or on our tablets, and we actually look out our window. Because I was telling Shavar that, we shared in the beginning about my wife and the tragedy of what happened in my life, and I only heard from one person after the ambulance in my neighborhood. My friends were my support net, who called me to find out what happened. Nobody has even noticed that she was taken away in an ambulance, um, and they're all home all day. So, and again, and there's my dog barking, and it goes back to it wasn't. This isn't a new phenomenon. There was something that happened in Queens many years ago in the '60s where a young woman was murdered outside people's windows, and they didn't bother. They all saw it, and nobody called the police. I think it was Kitty Genovese. So it's something to think about. And again, we don't have the answers right now, but I'm just saying let's think about it because right now people are feeling very isolated. We A lot of people are more isolated since COVID, and with everything being on social media or online, and a lot of people aren't reaching out and asking for help or for connection. So something to think about. Maybe that'll be the next podcast, making the connection. Well, I'm thinking now we may want to look at some closing thoughts because we're at that time where we probably should kind of wind it up because then we start talking about things that aren't even related to what we're talking about, or we just maybe go a little too long. So why don't we wrap it up?
Well, first off, I mean, Ronnie, if we can allow Daniela to talk about close out with her first week of working here, if there's anything she wants to share about that in the process of what she's learning, I think it would be great. And if you don't, if you're still learning and you aren't ready to share, that's also totally fine.
Absolutely.
Um, I would say I had a good first week. I'm excited to be here. I'm learning more about kind of like the structures and how we're working with the coalitions. And yeah, I'm just excited to support them and learn more about like what their interests are and what their goals are, and how to platform that, right? So we can get the word out there about substance abuse prevention. So yeah, I guess that's really, I guess, the wrap around my first week.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Ronnie, is we're gonna keep Daniela on while we close out? We're gonna
We sure? We're all on the same team.
let's do it. Let's do it. So, Ronnie, great episode. We talked about a lot. We talked about loss. We talked about community. We introduced one of our newest team member, who represents New York City Partners in Prevention, Daniela. It was good, man. Like I wish we do this more often. We could do this more often. Therapeutic. I had little tears coming to my eye at the beginning. Anyone who's watching, you'll see me rubbing my eyes because some of it needs to be shared. And I hope whoever listens to it gets something out of it. And if they don't, And if it wasn't for you, please say it wasn't for me. Say it in the comments. This was not for me. Or say this was for me, or say, oh, this is, it wasn't for me, but I'll share this with someone else. Because I think part of this is what Ronnie and I was sharing in the past, either online via a podcast or offline, is this therapeutic. And this builds our community, Ronnie and our community. This helps us stay connected. So Ronnie, any words you want to share?
No, I think you said it all, and I think we need to do it again soon. And just, the only thing I have to share is thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Uh, we are the solution.
Nothing changes if we change nothing.
See you next time.